A confirmation for the audio, please, guys. If you're able to hear me out perfectly well, kindly confirm the same. Thank you. So, hello, a very warm good morning to all of you, and welcome to Byju's Exam Prep IAS. Welcome to the session of Geography, where from today we shall be embarking on a journey for 24 modules. And in those 24 modules, we shall try and attempt to conquer this particular subject. Now, the subject of geography, let us be very frank and very honest with each other, at least for the 24 modules that we are going to be together with. So, the subject of geography primarily, with the namesake itself, most of the students, they find some or the other portion to be very difficult. Most of the candidates, they will find the portion of geography or the other subjects to be easily done, but the portion of geography to be the only tickling bone which they feel. So here, we shall develop an approach, we shall develop a level of understanding in this subject, which will give you a certain amount of advantage when it comes to the examination and when it comes to your overall competition as well. And here, for any of the subject that you approach for civil services, you have to understand and you have to get few things very, very clear. Before you are approaching or reading any subject, you need to get few things very clear. First of all, is how important is that particular subject? Whether it is worth the amount of time that you are spending or not, or whether it is something which you can do without spending much time on it. And if you are spending time on it, which are the portions that you have to concentrate upon? So that is something which you should know for any subject that you approach, right? What is its importance in terms of the proportion of marks that you find to be easily attainable in the prelims as well as in the mains examination? Then another thing that you need to understand is areas to cover. Which are the areas which you need to cover in order to gain a lasting advantage in the examination? Now, here also, let me tell you, here also different candidates have got different approaches, and that is absolutely fine. You as an individual independent candidate, you will have your own independent strategy and choice that you will make. And eventually, at the end of the day, it is that decision and that strategy that you devise for yourself that is going to basically lead to success or lead to a kind of a reputation or what we can say as a failure in this particular examination. I hope we are all here with one basic objective. None of us who are present here, I am sure, none of us are attending this session because we want to be the best geographers in the world. None of us are here because we want to take geography as a portion of occupation, that somehow if I study this, I will get a job in Indian Meteorological Department. We are here for one basic purpose: to clear the examination. So, which are the areas that you have to stress upon in order to help you clear this examination? That is again something you should be aware of. Then, the study materials. Study materials which are needed for the examination or for any particular subject. And in that, different subjects have different requirements. You will have certain subjects in which you read one book and all the questions from the prelims or the mains will be revolving around that book itself. So that is pretty easy in order to conquer that. But then you do have certain subjects such as history, certain subjects such as geography, science and tech, environment, ecology, art and culture. These are some of the areas or some of the subjects where you do get some unexpected questions. Now, should our preparation be based upon those particular questions, 2 or 3 questions which are out of the general reckoning of the portion that you are covering? Or should we cover all the basics and then we will take a look whether we can solve those kinds of questions or not by application of logic? That is again something that we need to understand. And then the approach to study. Approach to study. Each of the subject will have its own different requirements. For example, how you read economy would be absolutely different from how you are approaching polity, and how you are approaching polity would be absolutely different from how you are approaching, let's say, history, and that would be very different from how you are approaching geography, isn't it? So that is where you need to understand or develop different kind of approaches, and that kind of a flexibility is absolute must for the candidate. Otherwise, you will find that many of the candidates, they will pick up the same books, they will start ratifying and rote learning the same books, and the same approach leads them to nowhere, where you are neither able to capitalize on the amount of things that you have learned, you are not able to capitalize in the prelims, and because your preparation has been never mains oriented, so you don't stand a chance in the mains examination as well. So approach to study, whether you should have a kind of an approach targeted only for prelims, only for mains, or a kind of a dovetailed approach which will help you in both these examinations or in both these stages. So these are few of the basics that you need to understand for the subject of geography. Now we will come to each one of them. We'll address each of the portions. We'll address the areas that whether note making is relevant or not, how to prepare notes, what kind of notes are expected to help you, and if that is required, when do you start with the process of note making? All those factors we are going to address here in the initial portion. Now, when we talk about the subject of geography, you have to understand that this is one of those subjects which doesn't necessarily require you to delve deeper into the books. This is a particular subject where your immediate observation of your surroundings, for example, right now on the present day, you step outside your house, you will observe that there is significant amount of heat wave or a significant amount of warmer conditions that you are experiencing, no presence of rainfall. But then, within the next 10 to 12 days, you will start experiencing sporadic occurrences of rainfall in some parts or the other, isn't it? Some portions or the other will start experiencing rainfall. Then, a month from now, the entire country will start receiving rainfall. So, think about it, why this happens and what leads to this phenomena. The moment you step outside your house, that is where the subject of geography starts teaching you something or the other. Whichever locality you are living in, whichever part of the country you are living in, your area will have its own set of problems, right? No region in our country is absolutely picture perfect, or no region in the world is absolutely picture perfect. You will have some or the other issues that are prevalent in your area as well. Maybe there is overpopulation in certain parts of the region that you are living in, that has got significant amount of its own associated problems, the problems that you would also have encountered. Maybe there is lack of sanitation due to overpopulation. Maybe there's development of lot of slums which brings about law and order issues as well. Maybe there is over concentration of population, means the natural flow of drains etc is blocked, leading to flooding of rainwater during the rainy season. So all these issues that you have experienced till now in your life, that is something which is going to help you in this particular subject. Take the case of any other subject. For example, if I take the case of, let's say, the subject of history. Now, when you study history, you are basically going to study someone else's account of what they infer about history, right? Someone else has studied that, they have put a kind of a rendition or a translation to that, and you are going to look into that. When you study, let's say, economy, you will be required to learn those basic principles in order to be able to understand the economic theories, Same is the case with science and tech. In the case of polity, someone and few people have written that constitution, and the entire subject revolves around that. This is one of those subjects where your natural surroundings, whatever surrounds you, again, during the rainy season, for example, you would have seen or you would have come across the scenario that when there is significant amount of rainfall, the soil, its property, that in itself exhibits a kind of a change. And that is something which you have to notice. Each and every subject, nonetheless, directly or indirectly, they have a kind of a genesis from this particular subject. How is that? For example, what we study in history is the case that if we talk about ancient India, we talk about the fact that you had the rise of Mahajanpadas and you had kingdoms which were settled down in certain areas. The rise of the mighty Cholas is what we see in the Middle Ages, and also the advent of various different people, and people from, let's say, the Turkish descent, people from Afghanistan, all of them, they came over to India. And then finally, we study about the advent of Europeans. Now, why did the Europeans come to India? Why is it that of all the places that they could choose, they came to India? Because here, again, the reason is hidden in geography. India's location, along with the location of countries such as Indonesia, Malaysia, etc., that location is very ideal for growth of spices. Spices such as black pepper. Now, why did they need spices? Is it that they were so very bored with their food that they did not even think of consuming spice, or they wanted to consume spices and mix spices in their food? No. They wanted these spices because these spices, they act as the best kind of preservatives. Now, why would they need preservatives? Because all those colonizing powers of Europe, they would be situated in so cold a region across the northern part of Europe that majority of the months would be snowbound and snow laden, where no crops could grow in that area. So that is why they would require to preserve their food for those 6 month duration of low productivity. That is again something which is dependent on the climate, and that is why they required spices. So spices based on the climate, where are they grown? That is where colonization happened. So if you understand the subject of geography, the rest of the portions are much easier to decipher, rest of the portions are much easier to understand. So that will be our endeavor. Our endeavor will not only be to gain a kind of a bookish information or a bookish knowledge. And our endeavor will be to help you paint a larger comprehensive picture, where when you see any event, you are able to understand the historical aspect of it. You are able to predict what is going to happen in that region in the coming future. Why is it, for example, the region of the northern plains and the Himalayas, they experience so many earthquakes? What does the past tell us about that? And what does the future tell us about it? So many of us, we have that kind of a mentality when we attend the classes, that basically as soon as the classes are initiated, or as soon as the time ticks away, immediately the first question is, tell me about the page number from where to where it is found in the book. So I will rectify that in the book and my job will be done. So let me make this point very clear from day one. We are not going to restrict ourselves from any particular textbook, from any particular source of study material. This is not going to be your class 8th level of classes where you are given a book before the initiation of the classes. All you have to do is look at the classes and look at the book, match it up. Everything is same. That is it. We are going to expand our horizon to newer concepts, to newer phenomena. And geography around us is consistently changing. So your approach also needs to slightly have a kind of a change. But before anything else, here we come to the importance of this particular subject. Why is it that this particular subject is important? So here, I hope we are all aware about the pattern of the civil services, that how the examinations are held, in what conditions, and you have to appear for prelims, mains, and also the interview. Even though most of us, when we think about civil services, all that occupies our mind is prelims. Somehow I'll clear the prelims, after that God will take care of the rest of the journey. Right, let me first clear the prelims so that I have some amount of prestige left in the society, so that me, my parents, my friends, they can flaunt around that this individual had cleared the prelims for civil services. But let me make myself very clear, there is no marks or there is no pedigree given for qualifying prelims in the examination. You are here either to succeed, or you will fail and you will be forced to try again next year. So here, basically, the importance in prelims, you get around 14 to 16 questions directly. Okay? Out of these 14 to 16 questions, you will find roughly around three are very factual. Okay, three are going to be very, very factual, in the sense two or three. So, for example, they will ask you a particular name, where this storage structure is situated. They will give you a name of a random place that you might not even have heard about. Where is that place situated? So you will have two to three factual questions. Now here, many of the times you have to understand that the concept, the civil services and the pattern that has been changing, you have to be able to understand that, because now you are going to be an aspirant, you are going to be one of those who is going to appear for the examination. So you have to understand the changing pattern of civil services. Earlier, that is up till around 2011, 2011, UPSC would concentrate on the bookish information, that you have certain books, study those books, whatever you have inculcated from those books, whatever you have taken in from those books, vomit it out, your work is done. That is when you had the Second Administrative Reforms Commission. When the government set it up, Second Administrative Reform Commission, or the second ARC, gave a damning report to DOPT. And it was very clear, crystal clear, that look, the kind of candidates that you are selecting, those kind of candidates are very bookish in terms of the information that they have. They don't have the problem solving skills. That is what we are searching for in bureaucrats, that they should have the problem solving skills. So that is when you will find that from 2013 onwards, there has been a marked shift. And that shift has further been accelerated since 2018 onwards. And what is that? Now UPSC focuses upon the kind of residual knowledge, or a kind of an accumulated knowledge. Accumulated information. And this is basically, let's say you have visited a particular region, you have seen something, right? A kind of an animal species, a kind of a plant species which has got a unique characteristic, or maybe something which has been in news. All those factors need to be counted in. Everything that you have accumulated in your life till now, that is something which will be utilized. Now, here also, all of us, we come from different backgrounds. And we have to be very accepting of that fact that few of us, let's say, few of us have had a very good command over the subjects that we have studied in school level. That whatever was there in the syllabus of the school, we have understood that. Now, those candidates will have certain set of advantage to them. For them, understanding will be a bit easier. But few of us, we have to understand that few of us, we don't have that kind of a command over the subject. We have basically gone to school, and as is the case, the in many of the schools nowadays, you get a passing marks regardless of the effort that you put in. So you get promoted from one level to another very easily. So let's say we don't have that kind of a background. Now here you cannot have the expectation that you will have the same level of advantage as the person who has had a good academic background. You will need to work a bit more and be ready to work a bit more in this particular area if you really want to achieve success. Because at the end of the day, always keep one thing in mind. Around 5 lakh candidates will appear for the prelims. Half a million people will be appearing for the prelims. Out of those, think about it, that 1.5 lakh candidates will be appearing just because their parents had said so, just because they didn't have anything else to do, or maybe they wanted to increase their market value in the society, that this is an individual who is appearing for civil services. So you have 1.5 lakh candidates like that. Around 1 or 1.5 lakh candidates will be there who will be there to test the waters, that what this examination is about. Is this examination something that I can really dig my teeth into next year, or is it something which is not worth my effort? You will still have around 1 lakh candidate who will be very serious. 1 lakh candidate who will be very serious about their examination. And they would have been, or that includes the repeaters who have been giving this examination for 2 years, 3 years, 4 years, 5 years, 6 years, 7 years, and so on. Now they would be knowing the names of all the various interview boards for the past 6-7 years itself. They would also be knowing that in which season UPSC conducts examination, what is the reason, etc. So those are the veterans, right? Even in the present day scenario of the cricket IPL that is going on, you would see that few of them are veterans. They know how the ball will behave from day one. So that will include the veterans. That would include all those candidates who are very, very serious about the examination, who would have read more than what you have, if not the same number of books. Out of those 1 lakh candidates, that is where the ideal competition lies. Eventually, only 700 to 800 will succeed. So there is no denying the fact about the level of competition that you will face, the level of competition that you will encounter. Now here, if the approach is that give me the minimum amount of things that I will cover and I will clear the examination with rank 1 or rank 2, think about it. If you will have that kind of an approach, will you be able to stand in that competition? Charles Darwin, long time back, had given the theory of evolution, where he had talked about always there is going to be the survival of the fittest. It is going to be the fittest who is going to survive. The rest of them will wither out. Nowhere is this theory more applicable than in the examination of civil services. You'll find that candidates, they keep on blaming that UPSC nowadays has been asking the type of questions which nobody can answer. I have read these books, still I did not qualify for prelims, still I did not get through mains. There will be those who will crib a lot. But simultaneously, in the same year, you will find that those who top, they will have a very simple kind of an approach or a strategy. Keep the amount of books to the minimum, refer the books again and again, revise it multiple times, and they will achieve success. So obviously there is something. That is why you will find that nowadays, in the case of the interview, majority of the candidates or many of the candidates are there who have already cleared the examination or are in some service or the other. Why is it so that many of the candidates, despite appearing for this examination 5 times, 6 times, they are unable to clear the prelims, unable to clear the mains? But those who clear it once, they find it very easy to clear it again. Why do you think that is the case? They must have known something. They must know some aspect of the preparation which the rest of the population is not aware of. They know those tips and tricks with which you can clear the exam. And when I say tips and tricks, it is not a shortcut. It is understanding what to look into, what to focus into, what to prioritize, and what are the areas that I can ignore. And even without that, I can be successful. So you have to understand that nuance, right? Now, I will come to that where that particular thing is needed to give you a lasting advantage. But then, looking at the importance, the direct importance in prelims, 14 to 16 questions. Out of them, 3 are factual. So ideally, if you have covered the portion seriously, if you have attended the session seriously, ideally out of this, you will be able to get around 10 correct. 10 of them would be correct. And that is a significant advantage, right? Then in the mains examination, when we talk about the mains examination, so in the mains, the portion that we are going to cover here, that is going to help you significantly in multiple areas. For example, direct questions from geography are asked in GS paper 1. And GS paper 1 in total is of how much marks? Let me see if we are aware of this. Are we aware of the total marks that GS paper 1 has? Yes, thank you. It is 250 marks in total. Out of that, 105 marks is from geography. Let me assure you, if you have attended the sessions carefully, and if you have been meticulous enough and regular in the attendance of the session, does not mean that you cannot treat this like the other subjects, other literary based subject or literature based subject, where let's say you have attended first 2 sessions, third, fourth session. Obviously, I understand that all of us, we are very, very busy in our lives, and maybe your lives are much more busier than even the prime minister and the president of the majority of the states, because many of us, we give an argument that, okay, I would have studied this, but I did not have time, I had to do this, I had to do that. So I understand all of you are busy, but many of us, we follow an approach that, okay, if let's say the recordings are available, I will store it in a folder, in a document. One fine day, when the 3 stars, when the planets, when the sun will align, that is the day I will open it up. That is the day I will study it up. And because I am such an intelligent person, I will be able to cover it in 10, 12 days itself. And what are these fellows talking about? If I read that portion, I will qualify the examination. That approach won't help you. Every day, I'm bombarded with emails from the candidates who basically have the same kind of an issue, that I have missed 5 to 7 classes in between, and the rest of them, I'm finding it very hard to understand. That is the nature of the subject, right? For example, if I give you a kind of a comparison, let's suppose you miss out one of the sessions about the Marathas in, let's say, history, or let's say one of the portions in polity. Now, after 2 classes, if you rejoin the session, you will still be able to largely get an idea, okay, what 1857 revolt was about, what is it that Khilafat movement is about, or what is it that union legislature or union executive is about. You will have some amount of clue about what is going on. But in this situation, let's say if you have missed out the portion, that why is it that high pressure, low pressure is created? Why is it that winds are in circulation? Right? If you miss out that portion, you suddenly join the session at the time of tropical cyclones. Okay, cyclones is something that I hear in current affairs. So I will directly look at cyclones. Rest of the things, not important. So then, let me assure you, you will never have an iota of understanding about what is going on in the session. So the basic thing, all that I demand out of you, if I can, is be regular and be attentive. Regular is also of various types. You are sitting in the session, staring at the screen, thinking about what will be the lunch that I will have today. After today, where will I go? I have to go to meet this friend, that friend, etc., etc. But you are sitting in the class. That is also being regular. The other portion is that if you are attending the session, try to understand and grasp and relate it to your surrounding. That, okay, if this region receives more heating, can that be the cause why my area or my locality is also getting heated up? So that kind of an approach, if it is followed, trust me, By the end of 24 modules and 24 sessions, I will ask you this question again. But I can assure you, you will gain a lasting advantage from your competition, which generally your competition will not have that kind of an advantage. Let me assure you that. And the mains examination, where it eventually matters, where it matters, your performance matters. In the mains examination, out of this, basically around 90 to 95 marks can be attempted easily. Attempted easily. So out of that, as we talk about how to write an answer as well, how to create an answer. So out of those 95 marks, if you are following the basics that we talk about in the sessions, you will be able to easily score somewhere around 65 to 70 marks. That is attainable. In GS paper 1, what is the general marks that the candidates have? Even the ones who succeed, roughly around 100, plus minus 5, plus minus 7, that is the range. Imagine if you are able to score around 65 to 70 in geography itself. Then you have another around 140 marks in GS paper 1, including history, society, etc., where obviously you will be able to score that much. So imagine the level of advantage that you will have over your competition. And as we will discuss, you will find that majority of the questions which have appeared even last year, majority of them you'll find directly addressed in the PPTs itself. Okay, but the importance of the subject is not directly restricted to the 14 to 16 questions in prelims and 105 marks in mains. No. If you have an understanding of geography, geography is what? The study of the lithosphere, that is the surface that we stand on, the hydrosphere, the water body around us, the atmosphere, climatic conditions around us. All of them have an influence on the biosphere, the living species around us. So if you understand the portion of geography, the portion of environment and ecology is again something which is easily understandable. Environment and ecology is again something which can be thought about as a mere extension of the subject of geography. So your understanding of the subject will help you there also. But nonetheless, you will also find in the mains examination questions from agriculture to be asked in GS paper 3. In GS paper 3, questions from agriculture, right, that will again be close to around 40 marks. And again, you will have an idea about this particular portion as well. This is something which you can easily solve. But whatever you study here will be helpful even in your interview process, even in your essay writing process. Because the geographical understanding and the geographical possibilities and realities of a place, they define the economic practices. They define the demography. For example, have you ever thought about it that why, despite of the agricultural prosperity, why don't we have such amount of industrialization in the case of Punjab, where Punjab at one point of time 30 years ago was very industrialized, but now it is not so? There must be some geographical factors in place. Have you ever thought about it that all the tribal regions that we have in our country, why is it that it is the developmental process has not reached those areas? Because of the geological realities of that place. Those areas are either isolated by hills or mountains, as a result of which you don't have the development of infrastructure. So that larger perspective that you will gain, why is it that in certain years we face a lot of crop failures, in certain, and in the same year certain areas have floods which occur? What can be the solution to it? So all those perspectives is going to help you in essay writing, in the interview process, and in your general understanding of the syllabus of civil services. Okay, that is the level of importance. Now, Then we come to the classification of the subject. Now, before looking into the classification of the subject itself, here we are going to understand first of all what is required in the examination. So when you take a look at the notification, that is where the syllabus is mentioned. In the case of geography, the syllabus is mentioned in one sentence. That is Geography of India and the World. As simple as that, right? Geography of India and the world. Now, many of us, when we take a look at it, we start approaching it in silos. Okay, I will first study world geography, then I will study Indian geography. That is an absolutely wrong approach to develop. Here, what we are going to do is we are going to study the world with the help of physical geography. Physical geography. Okay. And then after that, we are going to study and utilize all the concepts that we have studied in physical geography to understand India better. And we'll have Indian geography. So when we talk about physical geography, that in itself is classified into three different types. You have geomorphology, then you have climatology, and then you have oceanography. Okay. As the name in itself suggests, in geomorphology, we'll study about the land areas, earthquakes, volcanoes, what is present in the interior of the earth, what is the structure, the plate tectonic movement, continental drift theory, all the convection current theory, the seafloor spreading theory, all these different aspects, the landforms, erosional landforms, what is weathering, what is erosion, what is deposition, what is mass movement, landslides, everything we are going to study in the portion of geomorphology. Then the climate around us, the atmosphere around us. Now, why is there increased heating observed in certain months, increased cooling observed in certain months, and why is it that we have so much rainfall in certain areas, and so on? All that we'll study in climatology. And then in the oceanography, we'll study the oceans, the property of the oceans. How do the oceans behave? Does the water move around? If yes, what is the pattern in which the water moves around? Now, in all of these, we are going to cover the world. We are going to cover the world with this. Okay, the global conditions of environment, the weather patterns, global conditions of oceanic circulation, global conditions in terms of the land masses. That is something we are going to address here. And then after that, in the portion of Indian geography, I understand that most of us, we have a very little kind of inclination towards studying all these portions. Because many of us, let's say when we talk about this happens in Africa, Africa is breaking into two. We are absolutely impervious to it, that how does it affect my life if Africa breaks into 5 or 10? Then suddenly if I tell you that, okay, this is happening in Punjab, this is happening in Uttar Pradesh, all of us have all our antlers and all the ears in attention. Because that is what we have heard about from childhood days. That is something that we can relate to easily. So most of us, we keep on waiting for the portion of Indian geography, right? In terms of the aspects, so here in Indian geography, again, we are going to cover the portion of physical, economic, and human geography. Human geography. Now, what are the portions that you have to address in each one of them? So, in physical, for example, the landforms that we have, that is the physiography, right? The physiography of it. Then, in the portion of physical, we will also come across climate. River systems are included both in economic and physical. So, drainage systems, right? Then after that, we come across forest and soil. a portion which is also referred to as biogeography in the context of the division of the subject. Forest and soil is also referred to as biogeography, right? Then after that, agriculture, minerals, and the industries. Okay. And in portion of human geography, we are going to study about population, settlement, transport. That is something that we are going to cover. Okay. So I understand that many of us would be waiting for this portion, because I find a general trend where candidates, as soon as we start the portion of geography, even if we are studying the portion of physical geography, the most prominent question will be, how do we end up learning the portion of rivers and their tributaries? Give us some idea about learning of these rivers and the tributaries. How do I learn all the minerals and industries which are present in India? Give us a shortcut. First of all, let me be very clear. There is no shortcut to learning. That I will give you a page and it will be in such a graphical format that without putting in effort, you will be able to learn all the tiger reserves, all the national parks, etc. There is no such shortcut. If that would have been available by this time, that shortcut would have made a lot of name in itself. So that is again something which you won't find in the class, right? That is where I will be disappointing you. Now here, there is another part of the subject which we will be addressing, and that is the portion which we are going to address as maps. Now again, maps and mapping gives many of the candidates nightmares, right? Many of them immediately will start learning cities north to south, cities east to west, capital cities here and there, etc., etc. We will develop an approach how to look at these maps. We will not be helping you, or I will at least never promote the kind of rote learning of maps, which oftentimes in many of the present context, you will get many news or YouTube channels who basically help you do that they will help you ruttify and rote learn the map of the world. Now, because if you think about it, from maps, at least for general studies, at least, or at the majority, you will get one question, that too every 2 years, right? One odd question. Problem arises when we base our entirety of preparation for that one question. So that is the approach we need to change. Okay. Now, after this, the materials which are required, the book list which is required. Now, before that, an announcement that feedback sheets would have been rolled out to you for the sessions that you would have attended. So fill in these feedback sheets, whatever has been your experience of the sessions, or whatever has been your experience of the class that you have basically gone through, how much of it you have managed to incorporate, etc. So all that feedback sheet, fill it up and send it back to us. Okay. So that is something which you should ideally do. Now here we come to the material list. Now, before taking a look at the material list, here, let me tell you one basic mantra that you have to concentrate upon. It is always better to read the same book 10 times than having 10 different books which you can read only once. Always better to read the same book 10 times. That is when you will get confidence. That is when the negative marks will come down. That is when you will be able to understand the concept with a greater clarity. For the portion of general studies, the requirement of materials for geography is very simple. Very, very simple. You don't need to get hi-fi books in the market. For example, many of us, we have the tendency, and that is normal with any or every candidate, we like to buy books. We like to accumulate and hoard materials, right? So there also you'll find many of the candidates, whatever is going on or whatever the various different materials are new in the market, immediately the approach will be, let me get that. Because we suffer from as candidates, all of us, we suffer from a very basic phenomena and a very basic fear. That is fear of missing out. What is the FOMO phenomena? Right? So if any of our friends anywhere, if we see on the internet that somebody is studying this material, immediately we start panicking that I have not studied that material. Maybe 2 questions will be asked from there, and that is why I will not qualify in the examination. So what is the solution? Let me buy that material. After buying that material, there is a kind of a relief, inner peace, that whether I read it or not, I will obviously study it. One fine day when the stars and the planets will align, when I will pick it up for the entire revision, I will study that material. But at least I have that. That is why you'll find many of them, all the videos of the sessions also, they have a very kind of a sort of a tendency where they will download it, put it in a folder, put it all of them in one nice folder, all the webinars, the documents in one particular folder, all the current affairs in one particular folder. So these are organizers. These are not the ones who will clear the exam. These are the ones who will give you advice about how to organize things, right? Because they are waiting for one fine day when you will study that. So that is why here also in this subject also you will come across many of you the consultations and information provided to you that read this book. Without this book you will never succeed. Without that book nothing will happen. Don't get swayed by that. Keep your material list to the basics. Basics as in the NCRTs or the Byju's book, any of them, whichever you are comfortable. Now, which NCRTs? Now, I'm sure most of us who are present in the session, I'm sure most of us would have done our schooling. So here the NCRTs of class 11th and 12th. 11th and 12th NCRTs, whatever are there, that is something which is easily understandable because it is obviously written for someone who is in class 11th, someone who is in class 12th. So it is not going to include hi-fi terminologies or hi-fi vocabulary that you won't be able to understand. But reading the NCRTs has to have a different approach as compared to reading other books. Because in NCRTs, each and every sentence can have a question which can be framed from that. Each and every sentence can have a concept which is hidden in that. So reading the NCRTs is something which you can do along with or the Byju's book, either of them. Okay, whichever you are more comfortable in, that would be more than sufficient. Now, I'm sure I'll be flooded with the kind of questions that what about the books that everybody recommends in the market? That is G.C. Leong and Majid Hussain. How can we survive if we don't read these books? Let me tell you, for general studies, these two books are not required. Okay, for general studies you don't or you are not required to study these books because GC Leong overall, you have to understand, will address the portion of physical geography to the extent where geomorphology and some part of climatology is delved in detail, and GC Leong has never been written for civil service examination. Okay, so that is not the purpose of this book. So here some of the particular concepts which can be understood easily, they are complicated in such a way that you get entangled in that. But nonetheless, if you are comfortable in this book, continue with this book. That is the idea that you have to maintain. Whichever book I am comfortable in, if that book is adequate enough, I will continue it as long as I have the ability to revise that book minimum of 10 times before entering the exam hall. And in the case of Majid Hussain also, not very much required for your general studies. The NCRTs along with the portion of newspaper. Newspaper reading is an absolute must. You cannot go through the examination without reading the newspaper. Most of us, we think about newspaper as sources of current affairs. That is why we always have the argument that I'm not reading the newspaper, I'm listening to the analysis, I'm reading, going through the monthly magazine. Do I need to read the newspaper anymore? The answer is yes. Because that first hand reading, that first hand level of understanding, and looking at the way in which an editorial piece or any article is written, that will improve your writing skill, and you will be able to create better answers if you have been reading the newspaper thoroughly and regularly for at least 1 year. Look at the type of writing that you will do. The writing that you will create will be substantially different. What is the problem that most of us face when it comes to answer writing? We know about a fact, but we are unable to express it properly. That is the problem. Why? Because we know about the fact, but we are not aware about the conversational language which needs to be put in, and in the template in which that particular information can be put in. So newspapers will help you overcome that obstacle. That is why, as Stephen King had also said, basically, the more you read, better you will be able to write. So that is a kind of a direct connotation. Then another important friend, so to say, your best friend in this subject and in this preparation is going to be the World Atlas. Any atlas which is present in the market. Don't be very choosy that I have this particular edition, I have this particular atlas. Any atlas that you have, but you should have one atlas. Now, what is the use of that atlas? Atlas is to help you understand the world around you. So atlas, for those of us who are uninitiated in this, atlas basically will have two types of maps: physical maps and political maps. Let me write here both of these, not needed for GS. For optional, you can study that. Those of you who want to select geography as an optional, you can study that because you will be required to study few of the other areas. And let me also tell you, those of you who are thinking about geography as an optional, in this portion of general studies, if you are careful enough, if you are attentive enough, let me assure you, almost 60 to 65% of the syllabus of the optional, that will be covered here itself. For the rest of the 35 to 40%, you will need to read other books and other portions. Okay, so significant amount of your optional study we will carry out with the level of the basics itself, and that will also depend on you and your contribution. If you have done your basic homework in terms of revision of the previous things, if your level of understanding is up to a basic level, I will always help you elevate that level. I will always help you take that level to the next level, and we can talk about the newer phenomena, the newer findings which are coming into the world on a day-to-day basis. If, let's say, we are as a group, let's consider ourselves to be a group. So we as a group, let's say, we don't follow that basic thing that every new session we are here, or every Saturday or Sunday we simply manage to switch on the camera or switch on the classes and we sit here because we treat it as a job, that okay, I have to attend this, then I have to attend another session. If we have that kind of an approach, let me assure you, our level of discussion will be significantly lower, where we will be covering only the basics. So if you want to elevate the level of discussion, that onus lies upon you significantly. But nonetheless, when we talk about the World Atlas, it will have physical maps, it will have political maps. Now here, basically, you have to have an approach which is explorative. When you look at an atlas, explore the areas, because I'm sure many of us are not even aware about how many different states they border the state that you are living in. Many of us are not even aware about the how many countries, or what are the different countries present in South America, what are the countries present in Asia, What are the countries present in Africa? Many of us are not aware of that. And we have to be very accepting of that fact. So that is where you have to be explorative. Open up the atlas. Don't be afraid to open the atlas. There is no demon which is going to come out of the atlas and bite your face away. There is nothing bad which will happen. Try to open up the atlas. Look at the various different regions. What are the mountains that you find? After a couple of classes, think about it, that why is it that this mountain would have been formed? How is it that this mountain could have been created? How is, or which are the countries in this region? Russia-Ukraine conflict is going on. Turkey is getting involved in the grain treaty. Why is it so? Where is Turkey? Where is Ukraine? Where is Russia? And what is the reason why Turkey is dependent on this? So you have to explore. And that kind of explorative aspect can always be merged with current affairs. Merge with current affairs. You come across any new conflict, any new issue which is faced, for example, right now, Sudan is facing a kind of a humanitarian crisis. Now, in the region of Sudan, there is a kind of a political war which has ensued between the paramilitary forces and the army. Now, where is Sudan? Why is it that Sudan has been in conflict? Which are the regions in Sudan? So you should have that natural curiosity. You should not wait that one individual knight in shining armor will come on the back of a white horse and they will give you the entire list that, okay, this is Sudan, this is the capital of Sudan, this is the Darfur region, next to it is Ethiopia, nearby that region is Egypt. Egypt has a capital here, Ethiopia has a capital here. You should not wait for that. If our understanding is to that basic level, where we need someone to tell us that Africa, say Africa, now let us, all of us, say together Africa. So that level is not required by civil services. You are appearing for an examination to be an IAS officer, a decision-making individual in the government of India. If you clear this examination at the right age, you might even grow to the level of chief secretary or cabinet secretary if everything falls in line. You cannot have that kind of an approach, a basic level of approach, and aim for a position like that. Okay. Have you ever thought about it that, let's say, you have studied engineering, you have no clue what a lathe machine is, you have no clue how coding is done, and then somehow at the end of the day you keep on dreaming, Satya Nadella and Sundar Pichai, they also look like me. So if they can be there, I will also be there. But I don't know what is computer, what is C++, I don't have any. So that is something where you have to elevate yourself. How do you elevate yourself? Being explorative. Explore more regions. Every day or in every weekend, I will give you a certain set of areas to point it out on the map, on the atlas. It is not about taking a blank piece of paper and then mapping it out. Try to understand where that region is. Explore the regions around it. For example, when I say about Coral Sea, when I talk about Tasman Sea, now what are the regions around it? Okay, and always try to refrain or stay away from the portion of the masala news, right? The aspect of entertainment quotient that you have with any particular subject. Try to stay away from the entertainment quotient, because UPSC does not believe in that entertainment quotient being asked in the exam. What do I mean by that? For example, if I start talking about the portion of geography, many of us from day one, we have only one curiosity which needs to be addressed. We don't care where the jet streams are. We don't care about the oceanic circulation. We don't care about the volcanic eruption. Few of us have that lingering doubt. What is Bermuda Triangle? I have seen various videos on YouTube about Bermuda Triangle. Let me ask this faculty, what is Bermuda Triangle? Or let's say, what happens at Mount Kailash? Is it really a divine intervention in Mount Kailash which is happening? Or is there something else that I'm not aware of? Maybe this individual will give me a secret that will satisfy my query. Or is Ram Setu real? Or which is the portion of Ram Setu? Now, all these kinds of what I refer to as the masala quotient, why I refer to it as masala quotient, because that is never going to be asked in the examination. And again, I will reiterate, I hope our aims are very simple. You don't want to be an informed individual in your life, you want to clear this examination. So better address those areas which will help you clear this examination. Okay? Now, here the module progression, how we will proceed. So first of all, we will cover the portion of geomorphology, then climatology, because the portions of the land, they will influence the climate and the land, they will influence the oceans. After that, we will drive towards Indian geography. In total, we'll have 24 modules. 24 modules, right? Out of that, 5 modules will cover the portion of geomorphology. Climatology, in this we will also include the portion of Indian climate. So from 6th module onwards, right up till 11th module, 12th will be of Indian climate, Indian monsoon. 12th will be of Indian monsoon, one of the most complicated phenomena in the entirety of geography. Then 13th to 15th module will be of oceanography. Okay, and then 12th and 16th to 23rd will be of Indian geography. That includes physiography, economic geography, human geography, all the portions of Indian geography. And then 24th module will be of map, shall be of map. That is going to be the approach and the progression of the modules. We are going to pay significant amount of attention into this area, some portions of this area as well, because this is where it is going to be highly conceptual. What you have studied today, understanding of that is very much required to understand what we will study tomorrow. But here, let me give you one kind of an assurance. Whenever we are going to initiate any of the topic, those of you who have attended the sessions earlier as well, you will vouch for that. Whenever we initiate any particular topic, let me give you the assurance. We'll start from the very basic as if we have no background of that particular area. We'll start from the very, very basics. But even when I start from the basics, I have a simple expectation from you that I hope we are aware that the earth is round. I hope we are aware that earth moves around the sun. This amount of basic, I hope we are aware about. So from that basics, we will continue. But then once we progress, once we proceed, we will be building up on that concept. So here also, you cannot have the condition where suddenly you join on the 4th class and you have the expectation that I will understand everything from the first class. In that situation, what I would advise you, and it happens with all of us, let's say for some reason or the other, maybe Prime Minister has called an urgent meeting, you have to go and attend that meeting. Maybe even more important than that, let's say while attending the classes on Saturday and Sunday, because these are weekend classes and weekends are when the candidates are the busiest of them all. So let's say few of the friends have called you for a kind of a snack and a kind of a chat that is more urgent than the Prime Minister's call as well. So you have to go there and you miss the classes. That anyways, the recordings are there. We will have the covering in that also. So in case a particular portion, let's say the 10th module is not understood, let's assume, does not mean that the rest of the areas I will simply drop it out. No. It is absolutely okay to have 1 week portion in the entirety of the subject or 2 or 3 weak portions in the entirety of the subject. But it is not okay to have the entire subject as a weak area. UPSC will never reward you for the fact if you tell them, you know what, I'm a master of polity, I'm a master of economy. UPSC will never reward you for that. It will have the certain set of questions from all subjects, right? Regardless of whether you are a master of a subject or the other subject, does not matter, right? So absolutely okay to have a couple of weaker areas, right? Those candidates who approach us that this portion of climatology is not clear, it is much easier to give them solutions, and also much easier for these candidates also to get back on the preparation track, as compared to those candidates that because I had missed 2 classes, the rest of the sessions I have not attended, so I have no clue about the rest of the subject. Tell me a trick in which I can cover the subject in 7 days. We are not magicians here, and I hope neither are you. So that is where you will be disappointed at the end. Okay? Now, then the approach. The approach to study which we will focus upon in this subject, which you generally don't find in the reference books, etc., that will be the approach of visualization. Visualization will be an absolute must. Whether you are able to visualize what is going on around you or not, that is an absolute must. Okay? Now here, after you have, or while looking at any particular topic, we'll look at the origin. For example, when we talk about India, we'll talk about the origin. How is it that the Himalayas came into existence? How is it that the Peninsular Plateaus came into existence? How is it that the Aravallis were formed? When we talk about the northern plains being very fertile, why are they fertile? How is it that we had so much amount of sedimentary deposits in that area? What happened in the region of Western Ghats that it is very steep? Why is it that the Eastern Ghats are not so steep? Why is it that the plateau region has got a certain kind of rocks? Why is it that the minerals are found only in the plateau? So everything that we are going to cover from the basics and the genesis, we have to be able to visualize that. So many of the portions that will have a kind of a pictographic approach. Okay, so that is something which is a must. Then after that, revision. Revision is needed of the previous sessions. Just revise it as of now, as the classes are going on the minimum amount of work that you can put from your side. Okay, minimum amount of work that you can put is revise the PPTs and additional reading materials. Additional reading materials. Just revise the portion which has been covered in the previous session. Now here also, if you are able to revise within a day, within a couple of days, then it becomes very easy. You will be able to revise the entirety of the portion of the weekend, let's say in 1 hour. But then if you postpone it, if you procrastinate it for, let's say, 1 week, 10 days, because Prime Minister had called me, because the Chief Minister required me for election duty, etc. If you are that kind of a busy person, if you postpone it for 10, 12 days, that is when you will find the process of revision to be cumbersome, tiresome, boring, and you will drop it at the smallest amount of opportunity that you will get. You will drop the portion of revision. Revise that multiple times. So what should be the approach to revise? Let's say today we are going to hold the classes and the session where we are going to cover certain aspects of plate tectonics, continental drift theory, all those portions we are going to cover today. Now, ideally, before coming to the next class, because in the next session, we will be discussing about volcanoes, earthquakes, landforms. So before coming to the next class, you should be aware of what is it that we had done previously, right? Then the next weekend, whatever we cover, before coming to the other session, the previous 2 sessions revision has to be done. If you carry out this mechanism, by the time that the sessions end, You would have read the entire thing, you would have revised that entire thing, it would be internalized, and that is when you will be able to extract some benefit out of it. If you are here for the sheer job or a duty that I have to sit in the class, and when the sessions start at 10, I start thinking that when is it that it will be 1 o'clock or lunch break, I will have some respite. When is it that it will be 5 o'clock or again tea break, I will have some. If you are sitting it here with that approach, again, I will be very frank, this subject will be very punishing for you, in the sense that you will have large chunks which will simply bounce over your head. Okay, so let's not have that. Let's gain an advantage. Be regular, and I can assure you, at the end of the session, I will provide you with a kind of an advantage that your competitors won't have. The kind of in-depth knowledge which is required to gain confidence to be able to address the questions that you find in the subject. Okay? Now, any questions that we have before we initiate the final discussion? Any kind of question? How to make notes. So when we talk about note making, so initially when we talk about making notes, understand that here in the session, I don't want you to have a kind of a running notes or a kind of a copious notes where whatever I am talking about, you have to keep on writing that, because in that process, many of the times what happens is what is to be said next, that is missed out, and you will always be continuing to type, please repeat the previous one, please repeat the previous one. Don't do that. But while having the discussion, always advisable to keep an A4 sheet paper next to you and a pen. Whichever portion you find something valuable, write it down in one sentence or a couple of sentences. When you revise that portion with the PPTs and the additional reading materials, supplement it with the notes. Now, ideally, I would advise that once you have read the entire portion or the entire syllabus, after that, I would advise you 10 days after the finishing of this module, you will be able to read the book or the NCRT or any book very quickly because you have attended the session. Now, after that, prepare topic wise notes. That for a topic, let's say continental drift, what is it that you have understood in a very simple point wise manner? For, let's say, plate tectonics, what is it that your understanding is? Again, in a very point wise manner. So if you are able to do that, that is what will be rewarding even for answer writing. Okay. Nitesh, question how we can do one subject, but the question is how to manage the other subjects as well. Well, all the other faculties will tell you about the other subjects as well. It would be absolutely grossly inappropriate for me to start preaching about how to study economics and how to study history. But the approach that we have talked about, guys, if you maintain that approach, what is required, how much time do I have, how do I cover this so that I retain it, and which are the portions that I can choose to ignore because only one or two questions are asked from that, which are the portions where if I study this, it will help me in prelims as well as mains as well as interview. Target those areas, you will find it easy to cover. Okay. Whenever we revise one subject, the other evaporates and vice versa. That is because you place a lot of time gap between revision. Ideally, please understand, unless and until you are a direct descendant of Albert Einstein with a brain implant of Newton as well, unless and until you are that kind of a genius who can basically put all the other brains to a shutdown immediately, all our brains have a limited capacity to absorb. So whatever portion that you are covering, you have to carry out 3 phases of revision, and that is a must. Any subject, 3 phases of revision. Okay, for any subject, any portion that you are covering, how and when. So first you carry out the study of the subject. Then after you have finished that, first revision should be completed within 7 to 10 days, so that it is fresh. So that, and if you carry out the first revision in these days, you will never forget. It won't take you much time as well. If you put on, or if you basically procrastinate this, this will go away. Second phase of revision of the same thing that you have studied, that should be carried out within 21 days of the study of that particular 21 days since you have studied that subject, be it polity, be it economy, be it history, anything. Then comes the third phase of revision. Third revision should always necessarily be carried out within 40 days. If you follow this approach, trust me, neither the monthly magazines of current affairs, neither the portion of polity, history, economy, nothing will basically worry you. The problem starts when we have put it out for 21, 22 days, we have not looked at the subject. Then, while we are reading the other subject, as I pick it up for revision, I find it out that it is so cumbersome and so much amount of hard work is needed. Revision is never an attractive portion for any candidate. The hardest thing that they find to do is to revise, because in revision you have to read the entire thing again. Whereas when you're reading a subject for the first time, you will have that curiosity. So the first reading will always be more interesting. Second reading will be slightly boring. Third reading will be slightly boring, so on. But that is required to help you retain it. Okay? Can I take GS and optional together in a day? Ideally, I would advise you that if you have time, you can always take it up along with current affairs, one GS paper, one optional, or two GS papers and one optional in a day if you are a dedicated full-time student. In case, let's say you have engagements during the week, then on the weekends, take a day for the weekend or any of those ideal days where you dedicate one day or a couple of days only for optional and current affairs, rest of the days general studies and current affairs. Okay? And Abhishek, the standard book of geography provided by Byju's has vast topic. Don't worry, cover the classes, attend the classes. After it, it is going to be easy. Then Rashi, we have had a very detailed session. I had conducted that session about how to choose the optional. You can basically find it out from the mentorship, or you can write to them, and you will get an idea about it. And Nirbhay, I'm going to write exam in 2024. By what time my optional should be completed? By the month of December 2023. 6 months before your prelims, your optional should, 5 to 6 months before your prelims, your optional should be completed. Okay? So now we proceed with the portion of geography, and we proceed with the understanding of this. Now here, initially, we will initiate the discussion very briefly. When we talk about the portion of geography, we have to understand that we are a part of a larger system, a larger universe, right? All this portion of geography, physiography, climatology, oceanography, Indian geography, we are talking about the planet. But the planet also has got its genesis. The planet, it is not as if one divine individual was sitting up there in heaven and there were rays of light which were emitted, planet was created, life was born. No, that is not the case. The planet has also been created, and our planet has got one star, that is the sun. All the planets, they keep on moving around the sun. Now, since the very early days, thousands of years ago, mankind was always curious. When they looked up into the sky, when they looked up into the sky and saw the stars, mankind was always very curious about their own place in the universe, right? Initially, when the understanding was very less, we had the presumption that we are the center of the universe. God created us all in order to help the universe. That was the presumption that we made. Now, in the very early part of human discovery and human and the technological intervention in the very early part of it. When you had the Greeks who started working on the sky and the documented portion of it, the Indian scientists also worked upon it long time back. But the documented portion is provided in significant detail by the early Greek geographers. Now, initially, the understanding was that the world is geocentric, right? Geocentric, geocentric world. The concept of geocentric world was given. What is the concept of geocentric world? Geocentric world basically means that you have the earth. Geo refers to earth. So geo or the earth is the center of the universe. So this concept talks about earth being the center of universe. Center of universe. Now this prevailed for a very long time. Everybody had a level of understanding that the sun is the one which moves around the earth, everything moves around the earth. And for those early geographers and early scientists, so to say, their level of understanding was very much restricted to the solar system itself. Their level of understanding was sun, earth, and moon. That is our world. We do not have the capacity to explore anything else because obviously technology had not come in. Now, slowly and steadily, the concept began, and concept was postulated of a heliocentric world. Heliocentric world. Now this meant that the sun is the center of universe. Sun is the center of universe. Now this prevailed for a very long time. All the understandings of the sky and the system around the earth was restricted to the heliocentric world. So that is why you will come across a situation where the earliest of the propounders of origin of universe, so the earliest postulation for the origin of universe was provided by Immanuel Kant. Immanuel Kant provided a kind of a hypothesis, a kind of a theory around the 1750s. And there he tried to explain the origin of universe. But there in his model, the universe was the solar system. There was no idea about what lied beyond that. So Kant, followed 40 years later by Laplace, where Laplace also gave an idea about the origin, but he was also restricted to the solar system because that is all that we were aware of. We were not aware of the world beyond that, or if there indeed lies a world beyond that. That is when, eventually, after some time, in the 1900s, when the discovery started happening, that is when the telescopes became a common phenomena, and you had a kind of a more developed telescope as well. Okay, telescope, even though were invented long time back, but it became a more common phenomena in majority of the observatories and science institutes. This is where in the 1900s you had one American astronomer with the name of Edwin Hubble. Edwin Hubble. It is after the name of this Edwin Hubble that you had the naming of the very famous Hubble telescope, which used to be the largest telescope that humans had put out, and basically now that has been replaced by the much more powerful James Webb telescope. I hope we are aware of that. Now this individual Edwin Hubble, through his telescope, he observed something very unique. He observed the fact that all the various different stars, all the various different planets, all the various different things that you could see in the universe, they are moving away from each other. Not that they are moving towards some other thing or they are being attracted by some other object. No, they are consistently moving away from each other. So Edwin Hubble provided the theory of expanding universe. Theory of expanding universe. Now, this theory of expanding universe was basically based on the fact that every celestial object, celestial means something that you find in the sky, something which is present in the space. So, every celestial object is consistently or constantly moving away from each other. Now, this particular discovery that managed to tickle a lot of minds, that if it is moving away from each other, there must be a force which is pushing them away from each other. Randomly, objects will not move away from each other. There must be something which has been pushing these objects away from each other, and that force is still active. What was that force? So that is when the scientists, they began interpolating it. Okay, you have extrapolating it and intrapolating. Extrapolating is you have a kind of an occurrence. For example, let's say I see one of you who is studying continuously and is very careful in the studies. I can extrapolate that theory that uh, 2 years down the line, I see that this individual can become an IAS officer, right? That is extrapolation on the basic theory or the basic data that you have. You have interpolation as well. Interpolation is, I find that one of the candidate who has after 5 attempts, 6 attempts, not managed to clear the examination. I will interpolate that in past that candidate must not have paid adequate attention, or must have committed some error somewhere. That is why that individual is unable to clear the exam. So you have extrapolation and interpolation. Now, when Edwin Hubble put forward this theory that basically the universe is expanding, you had the scientists being able to interpolate it, go to the past. Now, if you go to the past of this thing, what will you come across? Basically, if everything is moving away, let's say, that means at some point of time in the past, these would have been much closer. That means if we go back, then these would have been much more closer. That means if we go further back, the closeness would have increased. That is how, by interpolating it again and again and again, you had the theory, which is the most modern theory, one of the most modern theories depicting the origin of the universe, and that is the Big Bang theory. The Big Bang theory basically describes the aspect of origin of universe overall. Now, what does the Big Bang theory talk about? Now, here, obviously, this is an image captured by a telescope. Now, here, you would be observing few of the brighter items. I hope we are aware of the basic kind of astronomical objects that we have, celestial objects that we have. For example, I hope we are aware that we have the basic as a star. A star is the basic, right? Star. Now, this star, around it will have lot of planets. Planets will be moving around the star. Whenever you come across any particular star, always invariably it will have planets, right? For example, in our solar system, sun is the star. There are different planets. All these planets will have satellites. For example, you have moons. Each of the planet will have their own different type of moons, number of moons. Earth has got one moon. Like that, various different planets will have moons around it. Now, again, if you zoom out of this, you will find a cluster of stars. Cluster of stars. Right? A star cluster in a region here. Then you will find a group or a combination of stars, which is referred to as a galaxy, which will have billions and billions of these stars. So you can imagine, in that galaxy, how many planets do you have? Right? So all these images that you see, these are your galaxies, all of them. Now, what did Edwin Hubble say? Edwin Hubble basically said that, look, all of these, they are consistently moving away from each other. In a three-dimensional space, if you think about it, consistently they are moving away from each other. So that is the theory of expanding universe. If you interpolate it, that brings you to a possibility that if they are moving away now, means at one point of time in the history, they would have been present in one single unit. So at one point of time in history, everything would have been concised into one smaller unit. Right? This smaller unit, which would at one point of time would have comprised of the entirety of the universe, that would be what is referred to as singularity. Now here, I understand the kind of a roadblock that your mind will offer, that if you talk about the entirety of the universe concised in one single unit, that unit might be so very large that we cannot even imagine. But no, all the stars that you see, all the planets that you see, they have been formed as a result of initially the gases cooling down into liquids, liquids cooling down into solids. In many of the cases, the gases, they end up producing so much heat that you have the birth of a star itself. So everything is said to have been concised in a very small portion. And that is what is referred to as a singularity. It is basically postulated that this was a condition around 15 to 14 billion years ago. Now, this singularity would have had or would have experienced very high temperature and very high pressure as well. Very high temperature and very high pressure, to the order of millions of degrees Celsius and very high amount of pressure. Now, when that condition exists, where in this solid portion, you have that much amount of pressure and that much amount of heat, what will happen? It will explode. It will explode with a bang. And that explosion which would happen, that would put the materials away in all the directions, right? As the materials move away, they would experience some cooling because they are moving away from the event. They would experience some cooling. Plasma would cool to gas, gas would cool to liquid, and so on. So that explosion, which started pushing everything away, that explosion was referred to as the Big Bang. Because that is what started it all. The age of the Big Bang is estimated to be roughly around 13.8 billion years to 14 billion years back. That is the age of the Big Bang, which is postulated. Slowly and steadily, the objects, they started moving away. Now, when, let's take a kind of a common example in this. Let's say you have a hot balloon. Now, if you prick it with a pin, everything which is inside the balloon which will explode out, right? But if you are closer to the balloon, or there, immediately after this has happened, you will feel the warm air which is moving out. After, let's say, for a couple of minutes, things would cool down, right? So after the Big Bang, universe cooled down. Universe cooled down at an accelerated rate. And that is what brought about the solidification of plasma. And that is when eventually the gases also came into existence. So here, the Big Bang theory was born of the observation that other galaxies are moving away from our own at great speed in all directions, as if they all had been propelled by an ancient explosive force. Now, the postulation around 13.7 billion years ago, everything in the entire universe was condensed in an infinitesimally small singularity, which had infinite denseness and infinite amount of heat which was trapped. Suddenly, an explosive expansion began, ballooning the universe outwards faster than even the speed of light. Now, that is when the universe started expanding. Everything was initiated from this singularity. And this is a kind of a time frame where you will observe that immediately within few seconds, the level of expansion was humongous. Then slowly and steadily observe that initially you had only plasma. Then 3 minutes after the explosion, or the temperature had reduced from 10 to the power 32 degree to around 10 to the power 3 degrees. So there was cooling because of sudden expansion, everything cooled down, right? When you suddenly expand anything, it cools down. When you compress something, it gets heated up. So after few thousand years, observe the development of atoms. Atoms developed. After few millions of years, these atoms came together and they were able to form the gases. Okay, after that, again, those gases, they led to the birth of the stars. The stars, they led to the birth of the planets. And eventually, we humans have come into play. Now, very famously, one of the famous American astronomers and also one of the original creators of the very informative docuseries about the origin of universe, that is Carl Sagan, who also has said great things about how our Vedas, particularly the Rig Veda, has talked about this entire aspect of not a geocentric or a heliocentric world, but has talked about the existence of multiple different universes, multiple different galaxies long time back. Now, Carl Sagan talks about it that if you were to put the entire evolution of the universe along with the evolution of mankind, think about it that the Big Bang happened on 1st of January on a new year. If you have to put it on a calendar in order to understand the time scale of it, think about it that the Big Bang happened on 1st of January. Then humans came on the planet Earth, or the evolution of humans happened on the 31st of December, that to around midnight. So we humans, we have occupied this place for how long? For a few thousand years. We are presumptuous enough to think that we can control the universe and the outcomes of the universe. That is a different matter altogether. But we have been an addition in this universe only around a few thousand years. The universe has been in existence around 14 billion years back. And we don't know what was there before that. Because if there was a singularity, there would have been one event which would have led to that singularity. So, what was the precursor to that? That is something which we are trying to find out with the James Webb telescope, which has been launched. It will improve our understanding of the origin of universe. But here also, there are theories which have been provided, and that is the theory of an oscillating universe. What is that theory? When you think about the term, the theory of oscillating universe, theory of oscillating universe. What is that theory? Anything which is oscillating means coming back and forth, back and forth. So that theory of oscillating universe, that builds on the Big Bang theory. It tells you that, look, everything is moving away from each other, right? Eventually, why are they moving away? Because of the force that was generated at the time of the Big Bang. That force has propelled them into space. There is no friction. They are consistently moving away. Eventually, a time will come when that movement will stop because they would have lost the energy. That is when the gravitational pull of the other galaxies will start pulling everything together. All the hundreds of billions and trillions of galaxies, they would be attracted by each other, they would come together, they would again collapse into one singularity. Again it will explode, again it will come back, again it will explode, leading to the creation of multiple timelines of the universe. But this is largely a theoretical concept, right? Largely developed on the M string theory of Einstein. You don't need to go into that depth for science, and if interested, science and tech would cover it. But Big Bang theory largely provides us with the origin of the universe and the theory surrounding that. What led to this sudden expansion? There was so much, because this immediate or this singularity had so much amount of heat, so much amount of pressure, that suddenly when the pressure was released, that force led or threw everything in all different directions. And when things suddenly expand, then they are further repulsed by that, again, the force which is still active, because you have 10 to minus 34 seconds, 10 to the minus 30 seconds. How much is that time? Think about it. 1 second is so small. Think about it, how small will be 10 to minus 34 seconds. So that is where, in a very brief time period, shorter than the blink of an eye, that is when everything was thrown out because of high pressure and high temperature. Simply put, it says the universe as we know it started with an infinitely hot and dense single point that inflated and stretched, first at unimaginable speeds and then at a more measurable rate over the next 13.7 billion years to the still expanding cosmos that we know today. Okay, all of you who are interested in the cosmos and the origin of the universe, the stars, etc., if you are overtly interested in that, I would always advise you watch a documentary in that, very beautiful documentary. And the documentary in itself goes by the name Cosmos. So you have the older one in black and white, which I am sure you would not watch because it is again at a very rudimentary level. That was conducted by the great Carl Sagan himself, who was a part of the lunar missions of NASA. So he was a known and a renowned, world renowned astronomer. But now you can think about it, the cosmos, when we say cosmos, all the surrounding things, the celestial objects around us, the universe around us, that is referred to as the cosmos. So now you can, if you are interested, you can watch the documentary with the name Cosmos. Okay, it will have 10 episodes. It is narrated by um, another renowned astronomer. You would have heard about the name Neil deGrasse Tyson. So Neil deGrasse Tyson is the individual who basically came up with the motion whereby Pluto was not considered as a planet anymore. I hope we are aware that amongst the planets of the solar system, Pluto is not considered a planet. So this individual, Neil deGrasse Tyson, is the one who had that. He's a physicist as well. He is the one who propounded that motion, who put forward that motion to exclude Pluto based on certain set of criteria. So that is the individual who talks about the formation of the planets, the formation of the sun. You can always Watch about it. Okay. Still expanding cosmos. Okay. Simplify this. Still expanding universe. Is that portion clear now? Okay. If we consider universe in place of cosmos, is that portion clear? Nirbhay and Jyoti? Yes? Right. So that is what the theory of expanding universe was provided by whom? When we say the theory of expanding universe, that this talks about that still expanding universe, that was provided by whom? Let me see if we recall something, or are we waiting for the break? Okay. It was provided by Edwin Hubble. Remember the name of the telescope, guys? Hubble telescope. Edwin Hubble provided the name of the or the theory of expanding universe. Expanding universe. Okay. Now, this is eventually, after this, we come to the solar system. Right? The solar system has got one star, that is the sun, and it has got 8 planets which move around it. Why is it that the planets move around the sun? Which particular factor, which particular force do you think is responsible for the planets to be moving around the sun? Let me see. If we can think about, we can guess about that. Very good, beautiful. It is basically gravitational force. Himanshu, who gave the theory of Big Bang? So Big Bang theory was provided by Lemaitre and Gamow. They provided with the theory of Big Bang. Formation of nebula we will cover in science and tech, guys. Formation of nebula, dark energy, dark matter, the black hole, death of a star, birth of a star, everything you will cover in science and tech. You will not cover it in geography. Okay. So here, the planets, they keep on moving around the sun as a result of one basic force. And that force is the force of gravitation. How and why? We'll come to that. But before that, we'll take a break. So we take a break for 10 minutes. Okay. I hope 10 minutes is fine. So we take a break for 10 minutes and we come back after 10 minutes. Okay. We come back after 10 minutes and then we will continue. A confirmation for the audio, please, guys. If the audio is available and clear. So here we were talking about the movement of the planets. Why is it that the planets they move around the sun or any other star? You'll find that basically they revolve around the or any planet that a star has. You'll find that those planets they revolve around the star. Now this is driven by the force of gravitation. Force of gravitation. How? So a very simple concept is at play. Think about it. Suppose, let's say, you hold an object, right? You hold an object which is still and you allow it to, or you leave it out, you allow it to fall. So where will the object fall? It will fall immediately here, immediately below, by the force of gravitation. Now imagine that this object has got a kind of a velocity, a kind of a momentum across it. So here, when this object has kind of got a velocity, will it fall directly below? No, it will fall like a projectile. It will fall somewhere here, isn't it? So that is the same concept which is in use. So here, think about it, that when you have the sun, okay, and you have any other smaller planet. Now, ideally, sun will exert its gravitational force, but then this has got some kind of a velocity to it. So it will, rather than falling directly over here, it has got some amount of velocity. So it will propel itself to somewhere here, isn't it? It will position itself somewhere here. Now again, it will have an attraction which is observed towards the sun, but then it has got a kind of a velocity associated. So it will again try to fall, and in that process it will reach somewhere here. Now again, it will try to fall towards the sun, but it has got a velocity. So again, it will reach in a position somewhere here. It will reach here. And the same process is repeated. And that is how the planets, they keep on moving around the sun. Now, this movement around the central star, that is what is referred to as revolution, right? It revolves around the sun. But during this process, the planets also end up rotating. They rotate around a central point, or what is referred to as the axis. Okay. So here when we talk about the planet Earth, you will observe that planet Earth, not only does it move around the sun, it also keeps on rotating around its axis. That rotation is also consistent. Planet Earth continues to rotate around the axis. Now here, the side which is facing the sun, that is going to receive sunlight, and there is also going to be a side which is away from the sun. So the side which faces the sun, that will experience daytime, and this will experience nighttime. Now this particular classification or differentiation between day and night, that is basically differentiated by a kind of a circle which moves around the planet, a kind of an imaginary circle, obviously. So a kind of an imaginary circle is able to differentiate the region which receives or which gets exposed to the sun, which receives daytime. And as the planet, let's suppose here is the sun, as the planet continues to rotate, different areas will get exposed to sun and different areas will experience night as well. This particular imaginary line, that is what is referred to as circle of illumination, not elimination. That is circle of illumination. Okay. So circle of illumination, that differentiates the region which experiences daytime and the region which experiences nighttime. Okay. Now, how much time does it take for the planet to complete one rotation? Around 24 hours. And how much? It is roughly 23 hours, 56 minutes, and few seconds. But that is the time taken to complete one rotation. The time taken for the planet to have an entire circulation around the sun, an entire revolution around the sun, that is around 365 days, which we consider 1 year. So in 1 year, it manages to have one complete movement around the sun. So when we talk about Earth as a rotating planet, here Earth spins on its axis from west to east generally. That is the movement from west to east. That is the kind of rotation. And it takes the planet 23 hours, 56 minutes, and 4 seconds to complete one rotation. Okay? And this axis is tilted. It is not vertical. If you think about the angle of it, this axis that you come across, this axis is tilted from vertical and also having a tilt from horizontal. So when we talk about the axis of rotation of the planet, the axis of rotation has got an angle, and that is the angle which is 23.5 degrees from vertical. 23.5 degrees from vertical, and from here it will be 66.5 degrees from horizontal. Okay, it continues to rotate. Now here the circle of illumination will always follow a kind of a straight line path here. Okay, the portion on the other side of circle of illumination will experience nighttime. The portion which is exposed to sunlight, that is something which is going to experience, or that is an area which is going to experience daytime. Now, as this planet rotates, you have to understand that you have different places and positions on the planet. For example, consider a region here, consider a region here, consider a region here. Now, all of them will be rotating, but in one rotation, do you think all of them will be able to cover the same distance? Or in one rotation, do you think all these places will be covering different distances? What do you think? In one rotation, will they be able to cover the same distance, or will they be covering different distances? Correct, Santosh. Good. All of you. It will be able to cover different amount of distances. How? Let us understand that. So here again, let us assume that this is the planet. Let's assume this is the planet. Now here you consider different places. So a place A, a place here B. Let's suppose here also, if you draw the same thing, it will have something like this. Right? Let's assume B. Let's assume here C, which is at the poles. Now, in this case, when you carry out one rotation, so they will be covering that particular region, right? That particular circle around them. What is the distance when we cover a circle? What is the distance that we cover? It is referred to as 2 pi r, or the circumference of the circle. So here, this is the radius of the planet. Let's consider this as R, capital R, right? This is the smaller one. Here, the circle that you draw will be smaller than the circle that was earlier. So this will have a radius, let's say small r. So in one rotation takes how much time? Regardless of whether you are at A, B, or C, when you consider one rotation will be having 1 day, 24 hours as time. Now, speed is equal to what? When we talk about speed, equal to distance by time. Okay. Now, speed of A, if we consider the time to be one rotation, one complete rotation, speed at A will be 2 pi larger r by 1 day. Let's assume 1 day as a time. Speed of B will be 2 pi smaller r divided by 1 day. What about C? Speed of C will be distance covered by C in one rotation by 1 day. Now here, when you talk about speed of A, so in that case, 2 pi r by 1, now we know that this r is much, much greater than the smaller r. We know this because of the circle, because of the sphere and the properties of a sphere. Now, in this case, if this larger r is bigger in value, 2 pi r will also be bigger. So we can say that speed at A, that is going to be much larger as compared to speed at B, isn't it? What can we say about C? So C is the utmost top. So if you have endless amount of rotations underneath, C won't be moving at all. C will be almost consistent. So here, this is also going to, so distance covered by C in one rotation is 0 because it is situated at the poles, right? So speed of A will be much greater than speed of B, which will be much greater than speed of C, which is 0. So that means speed of rotation is going to be maximum at the region around equator, that is the central portion. And as we move towards the polar area, the speed of rotation reduces. So overall, speed of rotation at any point on the equator is at the rate of approximately 1038 miles per hour, or close to around 1600 kilometers per hour, close to 1600 kilometer per hour. So speed of rotation is going to be maximum at the equator and it will be reducing to 0 at the region of the poles. This will help us in understanding the direction of the wind, the direction of the oceans. Later on, when we talk about climatology and oceanography, this particular factor and this particular basic fundamental about varying speed of rotation is going to help us at that point of time. Okay, but here, while we are discussing about the basics of Earth, we should be aware of that because different places are able to cover different amount of distances in one rotation, hence the speed of rotation of different places is varying. Okay, I will write it down as well so that it is easier for you to revise. So as different places on the planet cover different distances, amount of distance in 1 day or one rotation, hence the speed of rotation observed is varying or is different at various places on the planet. Okay, with the speed of rotation being the maximum at the equator and around the region of the poles, it is minimum. Okay, now we talk about some of the very basic things that you would have covered even in your school days, but we are going to cover it again about latitudes and longitudes. How is it different? Nirbhay, please understand that different places, see, in one rotation, are they going to cover the same distance? Are the different places, if I consider this place as B, this place as A, and this point as C, think about it, that in one rotation, is it the case that A will also cover the same distance, B will also cover the same distance, and C will also cover the same distance? No, because when they are rotating, they are moving in a circular orbit, right? So all of them will cover a different distance. So what is the distance covered by A? 2 pi larger r by 1 day, if we consider the time to be 1 day, because speed is distance by time. B will be 2 pi small r by 1 day. Now the larger r here, that is the radius, this will be obviously greater than the smaller r we consider. As we move closer to the poles, the radius will keep on reducing from the central point. So that is why, as you move from the region of equator to the poles, the speed of rotation reduces, and the speed of rotation is zero at the poles. A and B are not on the same plane. How are they going to be present on the same plane? They are present on the same solid surface, but they are never on the same plane, right? You are talking about a sphere. So one is present, let's say, if we consider this entire sphere, let's say you have the place here as A, and you consider another place B, let's suppose here. Now, the planet is curved. The planet has got a kind of a curvature, right? The planet is not flat. I hope we are aware of that. I hope nobody amongst us has got a confusion whether the planet is round or whether the planet is flat. I hope all of us are aware that the planet is round, right? So if the planet is round, so here, when the B will rotate, B will cover a distance like this, A will cover a distance like this. So out of A and B, in one rotation, which covers more distance? Obviously, A will cover more distance. So that is why speed of rotation of A will be much greater, always. Because it covers the largest circle across the planet, right? B covers a smaller circle and so on, right? Here it is distance covered by C. Khushi, this is distance covered by C. By C. Shivani will come to that. Whether they experience daytime or nighttime, will come to that. Don't worry. Do this affect us also on a daily basis? This has got an influence on us on a daily basis, Kanishk. Okay? Right? So here, when you think about the speed of rotation, I'll tell you what is the roadblock that your mind will have in order to understand this. The roadblock that you will face is basically, but planet is one solid object. So if planet is rotating, can we say that different places are rotating at different speed? But it is one solid object. How can different places have different speed? If different places would have had different speed, every portion would have moved as a disk. That is the hurdle, that is the major obstacle that you will face while understanding this different speed. But please understand, think about it as a pure physical quantity and a pure physical aspect. Rotation or speed is simple. Speed is equal to distance by time. The distance that is covered in a unit time period, that is referred to as speed. Now, if we talk about a spherical object, a large spherical object, now in that large spherical object, as it moves, think about the region of the poles. So as it moves, let's say A is present at the center, C is present at top. Regardless of the rotations that you carry out, will there be any movement of C? Is it that C is also moving like this? No, underneath it, the entire planet is moving, isn't it? So that is where at the region of C, regardless of the rotation, the distance carried or the distance covered in one rotation is zero. Whereas at the region of equator, distance covered by A will be significantly higher. If we further move up at B, distance covered will be significantly slightly slower and smaller. If we come at C, in one rotation, there will be no distance covered at all. So that is why, because all of the regions in one rotation, they are able to cover different speed. That is why each of them will have a different property of speed as well. Imagine a situation or a circumstance where all of them, they cover the entire region with the same speed. Let's imagine that as well. That what would be the scenario if all the places would have rotated at the same speed? Let us imagine. Suppose here again we consider different places. Let us assume. Okay. So here, let us assume different places. A, B, C, and D. If all of them were to travel at the same speed of 1600 kilometer per hour, let's say 1600 kilometer per hour, all of them are covering the rotation at the same speed. Now with that speed, in one day or in 1 hour, or let's assume one day, so in that particular speed, the distance covered by A will be how much? Multiply by 24, isn't it? In one day, this is the speed. So A will cover this much distance. Now, that distance comes out to be around this much portion, one circumference of the planet. But in B, that distance will involve multiple rotations up till here. In C, with that speed, you will be able to carry out two rotations within a day. So that is simply not possible. So if all of them are able to carry one rotation and that distance of rotation that they have to cover, that keeps on reducing, obviously the speed that they will indicate, that will be very, very different. Right, Satish? Very good. So that is why you will observe that each of the individual places, they exhibit a different speed of rotation. And that is the case with any sphere. Take any sphere in your hand or any ball that you have and put that ball on a kind of an axis and rotate it. You will observe that different places on that sphere, they will be covering different distances, right? All of them will not cover the same distances. In case that you are still finding it difficult, that means the basic of understanding of circumference and circle, that in itself is not clear somewhere. So if you have to understand it furthermore, even though I don't think you need to do that, but still consider this particular circle. An object is moving around this circle, an object A. Now this object A, what is the distance that this object will cover? Let's say this is R. What is the distance that this object will cover in one rotation? Nirbhay, you tell me. And Kumaran, you also tell me. What is the distance that A will cover in one rotation? All those who are finding it incredibly difficult, the distance covered will be 2 pi r. Okay. Now, if let's suppose I consider another particular scenario, let's suppose I consider another particular pathway. Now let's here think about an object B and let's assume the radius to be r. What do you think is the distance covered in this case by B? The small r, distance covered by B will be 2 pi small r. Now, which distance is greater? Time taken is 1 day in both of them. Which distance do you think is greater? First one or the second one? Obviously, distance covered by A is going to be greater. So, if you have two individuals, let's have two individuals, A and B. In the same time period of 1 hour, let's assume A is able to cover 5 kilometers and B is able to cover 1 kilometer in the same time duration of 1 hour. So, whose speed will be greater? A, B, or do we say that both of them will move at the same speed? What do you think? A will have a greater speed? A will have a greater speed, isn't it, as compared to B? Put that in this scenario. In this scenario, A is covering a distance 2 pi r in 1 day. B is covering small r in 1 day. So here, let's say, can we say that speed of A will be greater than speed of B? We can say that, right? Is that okay? Now, here, think about another particular object which I place at here. That is C. Now C, regardless of how much movement A and B is having, C is not moving because C is present at the center of the circle. C is not having any rotation. All the places are moving. So here, if you have another individual C, in that 1 hour, that person is standing still. So what will be the speed? When we talk about speed of C, what do you think will be the speed at C? All those who had not understood that concept, Nirbhay, right? So the speed of C will be how much? 0. Translate this image that you see, this particular image that you see, translate it on a three-dimensional scale. Here you will have C, here you have B, here you have A. So that is why we can say always that A will cover a larger distance and A will always have a greater speed because it covers a larger distance as compared to B, as compared to C. Because anyways, when you move from A to C, slowly and steadily, what is the trend that you will come across? You will come across a trend that the circle keeps on getting smaller and smaller, isn't it? So overall, when we talk about from equator to the poles, the speed will be maximum at this portion of equator and it will be further reduced to 0 at the region of the poles. Okay? Is that clear? Now we move on to the next portion, and that is the revolution of the planet. Now, when we talk about the revolution of the planet moves around the sun in not a circular orbit, but a kind of an elliptical orbit. I hope we are aware about the difference between a circle and an ellipse. When we talk about a circle, the circle has got one center. This is a circle. Now, when we talk about an ellipse, ellipse is like this, an elongated portion, right? So the Earth moves around the sun in an elliptical orbit. And here, basically, the planet is tilted. As it rotates, as it revolves, the planet is continuously tilted on its axis. When the planet is tilted, now the axis, basically, it passes through the North Pole and the South Pole, and the planet is tilted. So different areas get exposed to different amount of sunlight at different parts of the year. Take about it from your own experience. Presently, the duration of daytime that you are experiencing, You would observe that the days are longer, the nights are shorter because the sun would rise early, the sun would set late. Now, recall it or try to connect it with what you experienced during the months of November and December. The sun rises late, sets up early. During those months, the daytime is shorter, the nighttime is longer, isn't it? So different areas, they experience different amount of solar rays, different exposure to solar rays during different times of the year, right? So here, that brings or gives rise to the seasons. Had the planet not been tilted, different all the regions would have received equal amount of sunlight. But because the planet is tilted, different areas experience different amount of sunlight. How and why? We'll take a look into it. So while the Earth is spinning on its axis, it continues to move around the sun. It takes the Earth one full year to complete one full revolution around the sun. Now, as the planet moves around the sun, it is in an elliptical orbit. Let's suppose this is where the sun is. It keeps on moving in an elliptical orbit. So invariably, there will be a condition where the planet will be placed in a location where the distance from the sun will be the highest. And also at one time of the year, the location of the planet would be such that the distance from the sun would be lowest. So that position, when the distance is the highest, that is what is referred to aphelion. Why aphelion? Ap here refers to the aspect of distance. And helion basically is derived from helios or the sun. So with reference from the sun, as the planet is farthest away from the sun, that position will be aphelion. And when the planet is closest to Helios or the sun, that is perihelion. Perihelion. Okay, so that is why during one year, you will have one day when the planet is farthest away from the sun, and during that one year, you will have a condition when the planet is closest from the sun. And here, sun is the reference point of distance, hence the term helion, perihelion and aphelion. Now, in the case of planet Earth, you also have Earth has got a satellite in the form of moon. So that moon keeps on moving around the Earth continuously. So there will be one time when the moon is closest, there will be one time when the moon is farthest. Now, in this case, the distance of moon and Earth are considered. So when you have the distance between Earth and moon, helion will not be considered, but Earth is the reference point, so G is considered. That is where you have the perigee and apogee. So here you will come across a scenario where when the distance is the farthest meaning around 151 million kilometers. And then a situation comes when it is closest from the sun. That is 147 million kilometers. Okay. When is it that we experience aphelion? This is basically experienced on 4th of July. And perihelion is experienced exactly 6 months from that, and this is experienced on 4th of January. 4th of January. So here, when you talk about it, Earth is at its maximum distance from the sun at aphelion and at its minimum distance at perihelion. The point in the moon's orbit where it is farthest from the Earth is called apogee, while when it is closest from the Earth, that is referred to as perigee. So if ever you would have observed the launch of a satellite, right? Launch of a satellite that is carried out by ISRO on a regular basis, if ever you have managed to sit it out and watch it, not look at it from social media and Instagram, if you manage to take a look at the entire tracking system that ISRO observes, you will observe that that particular satellite will also have its own apogee, it will also have its own perigee. Because as the satellites also move around the planet, as they orbit around the planet, you will find that the satellites, they come very close to Earth and then they are pushed farthest away from the Earth. Now, here again, a related concept, because we are talking about satellites, a related concept. Let's suppose we consider two individuals. Easy name, Ram and Shyam, or A and B. Now this A, he decides to throw a ball. Okay? This A is standing and he decides to throw a ball. Let's suppose. Now, this is A. Now B, he also wants to throw a ball. But B, what he does is, while throwing a ball, he is sitting in a kind of a bus. He's sitting in a kind of a bus, and that bus is moving at 50 kilometers or 100 kilometers per hour. In that, you have the person B who is there, moving at 100 kilometers per hour. Now, B decides to throw the ball in the same direction. Now, out of A and B, in which case do you think the ball, and let's assume both of them have had the same gym trainer, both of them, they consume the same amount of proteins, so both of them have got the same muscle power. Not that B has had spinach today like Popeye and he will have more power. Let's assume both of them have the same amount of power. Both of them are throwing the ball. Now, in the case of A and B, in which case do you think the ball will be moving with a greater velocity? A or B? Okay. Any of you who have said A, could you think about the reason or the logic? All those who have said A, the logic and the reason why do you think that A will be able to throw it at a greater speed? Any of you? It might be correct. So think about it. Or will that have the same velocity? Think about it. Because one is balance. Balance in what sense? Balance of nature? Because it is free and alone, so he can throw it much faster. Okay, let's assume he is surrounded by 15 individuals who are there to watch this event. He is not alone. Let's suppose, because that is not a fault of yours, because when we think about bus, we can never imagine a situation where the individual will be able to free their hands as well, because most of the times when we think about buses, we think it is overcrowded. But here you have to understand one basic fact, that when bus is moving, right? When a bus is moving, and if you are holding a ball, the ball also has got a velocity. If an individual is observing from the ground, let's say an individual is observing from the ground, for that individual, if you ask the movement of the ball, regardless of whether you throw it or not, the ball will also have an inherent velocity with which the bus is going. And then when you further throw it, you are providing that extra push. So that is why you would observe generally, if you throw something out of the moving bus, let's suppose you even drop a bag or a piece of plastic from a moving bus or a train, you'll find it falls on the ground with an incredible force. It bounces and moves forward because that has got an apparent speed associated with it. So that is why when already there is a base speed, on top of it you apply some amount of force, the speed will be much greater. So the speed of the ball thrown by B will be much, much greater. Now, that same fundamental is put to use while launching satellites as well. While launching satellites, it is always observed that when you have an inherent speed associated, that speed will always aid to the aspect of more. Okay, few of the very interesting reasons have come in. So, A, apply more force to throw. Why? Bus will be moving, so speed of throwing ball will be less. Why do? Please don't associate it with so much of your normal life that bus will be so much moving and that is why he will not find a still position to throw. Think about the ideal conditions. Bus is moving at a speed of 100 km/h and the glass will also not move. That kind of a stability is there. So the throw that you have, that throw will be in a normal condition, the same condition in which you are throwing at A, because A can generate more potential energy than B. Why do you think A can generate more potential energy, Abhishek? You have written this answer and pasted its answer 4 times. That is how sure you are. Why do you think A can generate more potential energy? Just because that person is standing. That person, B, is also standing on the bus. It is not as if as the bus is moving, B will not be able to find their ground. Imagine the bus is moving in an expressway. The bus is not moving in the dingy roads that we have in our city. Both of them will have the same amount of potential energy generated. But then, while throwing, when we talk about B, the ball is already at a speed of 100 km/h. And plus, you have the energy transition by B. So, always the ball thrown by B will grow much faster. So, that is the same logic when you think about it while launching of satellites. That is why satellites are always launched, generally keeping in mind that where is it that the speed of rotation is maximum. And where do you think the speed of rotation of the planet is maximum? It is maximum at equator, around the region of equator. That is why majority of the satellite launches you will find to have been taking place closer to equator. Always keep that in mind. Because the speed of rotation at equator is maximum and satellites need to be given that extra boost to escape, to have that escape velocity to escape the gravitational pull of the planet. That is why the satellites need that extra speed. That is why majority of the satellite launches, they happen very close to the region of equator. Okay. So that is basically the aspect of the rotation or the movement. Okay. Now, then we come across the seasons on the earth. That is, as the planet rotates and revolves at the same time, you would observe this is the axis, this is the axial tilt, this is your circle of illumination, right? The planet is divided into two equal parts based upon the equator which travels through here. That is the largest horizontal circle on the planet, that is the equator. So the planet is divided into two equal halves. You have the northern part referred to as northern hemisphere, and the southern part, which is the southern hemisphere. Okay. Northern part, that is the northern hemisphere and the southern hemisphere. Now, in this position of the planet, can we say that both the hemispheres will experience the same exposure to sunlight? Or do you think one of the hemispheres will get exposed to more amount of sunlight? Obviously, we can see from here itself that one of them will be basically exposed more to sunlight as compared to other. So can we not say northern hemisphere gets more exposure to sunlight? more exposure to sunlight. In this case, can we say that only from the circle of illumination we can see that only small portion of the southern hemisphere is exposed to sunlight? So southern hemisphere appears to be tilted away from the sun, we can say that. Appears to be tilted away from the sun. We can say that. Now, that is the condition of northern summer. We'll come to it. Now think about other position. Let's consider any other position of the planet. Let's consider the portion here when the planet is here. Now, the tilt of the axis, that will remain the same. The tilt of the axis won't change. Let's say it is tilted like this. Here, let's assume you have the circle of illumination. And here, let us assume you have the region of equator. Let's assume this is the equator. Now, in this position, northern hemisphere appears to be tilted towards the sun, or the southern hemisphere appears to be tilted towards the sun. The tilt in this and this is the same. The axis is tilted in the same direction. But here, you will observe that it is as if the southern hemisphere is exposed more to the sun, whereas in this case it was away from the sun. But because the planet is moving around the sun, in this case, southern hemisphere will be exposed towards the sun, tilted towards the sun, towards the sun. And this is where northern hemisphere tilted away from the sun, away. So any portion which appears to be tilted away, obviously less exposure to sunlight. Less exposure to sunlight means less heat. Less heat means winter season. Any portion which is exposed to the sun, greater exposure to sunlight. Greater exposure to sunlight means warm, that is summer. Right? Now, in between these positions, basically, the planet as it moves, it will think about it as if this is the location of the sun. This is the position of the summer where the tilt is like this, where the northern hemisphere appears to be tilted towards the sun. We have talked about the other position where the tilt is the same. Northern hemisphere appears to be tilted away from the sun. But imagine a scenario with this tilt. The planet comes like this in front. Now the tilt is in a plane which is different from the earth and the sun. So if the tilt is like this here in this position, let's assume in this position, the tilt is the same. Now in this case, northern hemisphere is tilted towards the sun, or the southern hemisphere is tilted towards the sun, or both of them get equal exposure to sun. What do you think? Both of them will get equal exposure. So in this case, as both of them get equal exposure to sun, you will have equal length of day and equal length of night in both these cases. These conditions are referred to as equinox. Equal length of day and night. This happens twice. This happens here as well. Right? This is also a condition where neither the northern hemisphere nor the southern hemisphere is tilted towards or away. Here also equal length of day and night. So can we not say that all the various different varieties and different types of climatic conditions that we come across, can we not say it is an outcome of the tilt of the planet? Right? If the planet would not have been tilted, the length of the day and the night would have been very same. Because the planet is tilted, that means at different positions of the year, different areas get exposed to different amount of sunlight and basically night time. So you have varying length of day, varying length of night, totally ascribable to the tilt of the planet. Now let us take a look at the various seasons. What is it that we experience during the various seasons? So let us start with the month of November, December, January. This is where you have the axis, right? This is where I hope you can see the circle of illumination. This is your northern hemisphere. This is your southern hemisphere. So from the image in the month of November, December, January, November, December, January, February as well, and October as well. In these months, what can we say about the tilt of the northern and the southern hemisphere? During these months, that is during the month of October to February, can we not say northern hemisphere here, can we not say is tilted away from the sun, right? Because if this is the sun, northern hemisphere, because that is where the light is coming from, that is why these portions are significantly lighted, if you can think about it, and these portions are dark. So this is the sun. So can we not say northern hemisphere is tilted away from the sun? When it is tilted away from sun means you will have shorter days and longer nights. Shorter days and longer nights. And when you have shorter days and longer nights, that brings about a winter season. Then what can we say about the southern hemisphere? Exactly the opposite of it. So countries like South Africa, Madagascar, countries like Australia, New Zealand, all of them who are present in the southern hemisphere. So in this case, can we not say that when we talk about southern hemisphere is tilted towards the sun? So that is where you will have longer days and shorter nights. Right? So this is where you experience the summer season. Okay? Please get this very clear. Majority of the candidates, they have the kind of an opinion. If it is winter in India, it would be winter across the planet, it would be winter across the universe. But that is not the case. When you have winters in India, Australia experiences summer. Southern hemisphere experiences summer. Now here, furthermore, what can we say about the polar regions? Now here you have the North Pole, the region around Arctic area. This is what is the Arctic Circle. And here you have the South Pole. Now, in the case of North Pole and South Pole, what can we say about the duration of day and night? For example, in North Pole, the region of North Pole, do you think it will experience daytime? Consistently while the planet is rotating, you'll find that the region of North Pole that lies on the other side of the circle of illumination. So regardless of the rotations that you consider in this position of the planet, North Pole is devoid of sunlight at all. So in this region or in these conditions, you can always experience that the region of the Arctic does not receive sunlight during this time. So when it doesn't receive sunlight during this time means what? Means continuous night. Continuous night time. That is why the region around Arctic, the region around Antarctica, they have around 4 to 5 months of continuous daytime and continuous nighttime. Right? Whereas when we talk about the region around Antarctica, the South Pole, now here you will observe that lies on the brighter side of the circle of illumination, the portion which is exposed to the sun. So when you talk about the number of rotations that happen, regardless of the number of rotations, it will not come across the other side of circle of illumination. It will always lie on the lighted part. That is why during these times you will observe Antarctic region during these months, regions during these months does not experience night. Experience night. So when it does not experience night, what is the outcome? Continuous daytime. Continuous day. Continuous day does not mean it will be as hot that we experience daytime as we experience the daytime in the present circumstances. No. Continuous day, even in those areas, if you have continuous day, sun is at a position that you observe in the evenings or early mornings, very close to the horizon. Right? I hope we are aware of the term horizon. I hope that English vocabulary is fair enough that we understand the meaning of the horizon. Horizon is basically that particular place that you see with your visual aspect where the sky appears to meet the ground surface, where the sun rises and the sun eventually sets. That is what is horizon. So during these times, sun will be very close to the horizon, a kind of a slanting light, like an early morning or an evening light. That will be a continuous phenomena for 5 to 6 months almost. Then we come to the months of March. From February onwards and in the month of March, you will observe that the axis is very much aligned to the tilt, right? So that happens twice a year. That happens in this position and in this position. Here, the axis, its plane is very different, but basically you will observe it coincides with the circle of illumination. So during the month of March and September, when in March? 21st March. And in September? 23rd September. During this time, you will come across a scenario where both the hemispheres are receiving equal amount of sunlight. Neither is tilted away nor is tilted towards. Both hemispheres receive equal sunlight. So that means you will have equal length of day and night. This is referred to as the conditions of equinox. You have two equinoxes, once in between winter to summer, once in between summer to winter. Okay, both of them have got different names. So the transitioning one between summer to winter, when the conditions they transition from summer to winter, that is in the month of September, that is where you will have the condition of vernal and autumnal equinoxes which are present. You don't need to probably learn all of this, but nonetheless, the definition of all of these, the detailed written portion of all of these will be provided in your additional reading materials for your revision purposes also. Okay? Now, by the way, when we talk about the movement of the planet will also be situated here. Planet will also be situated here. So in all these different places, you will not have the same amount of the length of day or night in different areas. That is why you will find that this particular position, when the northern hemisphere appears to be tilted the farthest away and the southern hemisphere appears to be tilted closest to the sun, that happens on 22nd of December. 22nd of December is when in northern hemisphere you will experience longest night. And in southern hemisphere, you will experience that day, because it is tilted most towards the sun, you will experience longest day. Longest day. Right? So that is where you will experience, this is what is referred to as the winter solstice for northern hemisphere, or the December solstice. Okay, that is when you have the longest length of day in southern hemisphere, and longest day in southern, and longest night in northern hemisphere. Okay, yes, Abhishek. That is, autumnal equinox will happen in March. This is where you will have the autumnal. This is rather when we talk about spring, right? And this is the autumn. So basically, this is when you will have autumnal equinox, that is in September. And this is when you have vernal equinox. This happens in the month of March. This happens in the month of September. Transition between summer to winter, that is basically autumn, and transition between winter to summer, that is spring, and that is what is vernal equinox. Okay, now then the last portion which we'll cover before taking a lunch break, so hold your tummy tight for a brief moment, that is during the month of, all the way from April all the way till August. April to August. Now here, this is your circle of illumination. This is the tilt of the planet on its axis, around which it is consistently rotating from west to east. This is the region of equator, if you consider. This is the northern hemisphere. This is the southern hemisphere. So, during the month from April to August, you will observe that northern hemisphere is tilted towards the sun. Towards the sun. That means longer days, and shorter nights. When you have longer days, there will be greater heating by the sun for a prolonged duration. That means the summer season. Whereas in the southern hemisphere during the same time period, if you consider the southern hemisphere during the same time period, here it appears to be tilted away from the sun. So you will see majority of the portion of the southern hemisphere that is in darkness during any particular point of time, and very small area is lighted. So southern hemisphere tilted away from sun, and that is where you have shorter days and longer nights. That means you will have lesser heating, and that is winter season. Okay? Now, the longest day in the northern hemisphere, or this position to the extremity, will be observed on 21st June. On 21st June, you will observe that northern hemisphere has got longest day. And southern hemisphere has got longest night. This is where it will be the closest and the furthermost. This is what is summer solstice, what is also referred to as June solstice. Okay. What about the polar areas? North Pole, and South Pole. Observe the region of circle of illumination. North Pole consistently will be in light. South Pole consistently will be in darkness. So here, during these conditions, the region of the Arctic during these months Arctic region will not experience night. So that is because it will have continuous daytime. Sun will always be shining above the horizon. Sun will never set below the horizon. You will always find the sun to be shining there. And during these months, the Antarctic region will not experience day. That is, sun will not rise up at all. So continuous night. Okay. So that is the phenomena where you can see that because the earth is tilted on its axis, different regions will experience different duration of daytime as well as different duration of nighttime in general. So the seasonal variation on the planet is brought about by the tilt or the tilt in the axis of the planet. Okay. So that is where we'll restrict the discussion here, and we'll take the lunch break. When we come back, why we take April to August and March to October? No, Abhishek, because March and September, they are the months of equinox. That is where the tilt in comparison, the exposure level keeps on, is similar in both these months. Otherwise, the exposure level of sunlight increases or decreases. Through the summer, through the winter, it changes, but in the months of March and September, it is largely similar. Okay, so we take a lunch break, guys, and we come back at 2:10. So take 1 hour of lunch break. Santosh, when we talk about 21st of June, that is when the tilt is, because you have to understand that the planet will have its position here also, and in all the places when you consider the tilt, it will not have the equal level of exposure. It is here when the northern hemisphere will have the largest exposure. So that is where 21st of June is when you have the June solstice, when you have the longest and the smallest one. Okay. So that is what we consider as the portion or the seasons. We meet again after the lunch break where we continue further and we enter into the realities of the rotation, revolution, the formation of the planet, the structure of the planet. All of that we will discuss after the lunch break. So let's take a lunch break till around 2:10. Okay.